Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Jack and Joe Show, where we're delighted with the way the schedule's fallen, Jack, to not be discussing a horrible defeat to Everton, but to be discussing a wonderful win over Sunderland. How are you doing? How did you find the match?
Yeah, that was much better from Fulham. Actually, sometimes when you put in such a poor performance in a game like Everton, you obviously demand as a fan base and demand as a manager for a response, and sometimes you don't get it. We 100% got that within the first half an hour, and then throughout the whole 90 minutes. And I thought it was as strong as a performance as I've seen from Fulham this season. Should have scored more, but one will do. Clean sheet, Joe, and I think we both went home on Saturday night fairly pleased with what we'd seen.
100%. I mean, one tweet that I saw and a few people saying it when it was, half time and you were doing your live tweets about all the chances that we'd had and we weren't taking them, a story that continued and especially towards the middle, towards the end of the second half got worse. We had so many chances and a few of them clear cut as well, and they were very, very close to going in. And a lot of people were saying it was the same old story. And I've got to admit, maybe from last season, but for this season, I completely disagree. I don't think we've played very well very often in terms of creating a lot of chances and spurning them. I think we've struggled to create at all. And that's been the wider issue. I don't think we've necessarily been wasteful when we've had clear-cut opportunities. I don't think there's been many. I think back to Brighton, created nothing. United, probably one of the only ones actually where we did create quite a lot. Chelsea, no real clear-cut chances, I would say. Leeds, very few. Brentford obviously took our chances. That was a good day. But then you go to those four defeats in a row, and in all of them, we weren't creating much. Wolves, obviously, we got a great result. I don't think we created too many chances in that game, weirdly. Clear-cut ones, at least. And obviously at Everton, we all saw what we saw. There was nothing there. This is the first time I really felt like we peppered the opposition, maybe aside from that Brentford game, in particular in the first half. At half time, we were probably thinking we should be one goal in front. Wilson curling one just wide. Two good chances for Kevin. Three if he'd have taken the ball in his stride. Anderson fired one just wide from distance. There was quite a few different opportunities. But ultimately, we went in at the break 0-0. Jack, what were you thinking at the break? Because I was just saying to you before we started, I was feeling pretty good in terms of what we'd seen. I was thinking, we've been the dominant team. We've reduced Sunderland to next to nothing. But there's always that in the back of your mind. Are they going to score with their first clear-cut chance? But there was something different about the weekend where I thought the balance of our team was good. Obviously helped, in our opinion, by the fact that Lukic was banned and we couldn't go with a more defensive pairing. Iwobi dropped back and we started Kevin on the left. The players looked confident to me, and to me it looked like there was that belief that we would eventually get that goal, even if there was a bit of sort of discontent and frustration in the stands. I wasn't really seeing that on the pitch. I was seeing Fulham winning back the ball very, very high up the pitch regularly, a lot of turnovers, us playing through the opposition for real the first time this season, and that's a Sunderland team that had got a quite defensive formation, not necessarily saying defensive tactics, but a defensive formation, and are hard to play through this season. So I was happy with what I was seeing. What were you thinking at half time?
Well, quite a few things. I think at half time I was thinking this is quite worrying that we haven't taken these chances. Kevin was clean through twice. Was sort of clean through, and he got a shot away and it was saved by Roos, but the second he lost control of the ball and Sunderland recovered. The Wilson chance is great as well. And I think he was probably in his own right to go alone. He was coming off a hat-trick for Wales. The way he'd opened up his body to shoot, it felt very Harry Wilson-esque. He did have men coming up with him, but I thought him going for goal wasn't selfish. It wasn't the wrong decision. I actually think that was probably our best chance of the first half. I actually really enjoyed the variety of how we sort of create chances as well. Some came on the break, some came from, like you say, breaking Sunderland down and playing through them. And I also want to give massive credit to Sander Berge, who was at heart of all the big chances that Fulham had. He slipped through Harry Wilson, he slipped through Kevin, and in the second half he played the ball out to Samuel Chukwueze, who obviously then found Raul Jimenez. But this was like the first weekend where, and I'll mention Saturday and then Sunday, where I was very invested in the other results. And you suddenly were seeing West Ham were 2 up at Bournemouth and Forest were 1 up at Liverpool. and we were having all these chances and not taking them. I was thinking, God, we're going to get dragged into this because we can't take our chances in this current game, and everyone around us is picking up points. I hate to say I cheered on Chelsea at 12:30, but I was very much in the camp of Chelsea winning would be huge for us. And then you go to Sunday, after we win, after West Ham drop 2 points, and after Forest win 3-0, and I was watching that Villa-Leeds game at Ellen Road like I was a Villa fan. I was kicking every ball. And when Rodgers scored the free kick, I must have celebrated that as much as I did Raul Jimenez scoring at the weekend. And some people will say, well, that's just stupid. Just focus on yourself. It's because you don't...
Dare I say too early, Jack?
No, I think I even
That's
knew
a
myself
joke, by the way.
early.
I look from game week 1. I'm looking at the results. I'm thinking, how does this affect Fulham? Because, like you say, that win yesterday is very important, but obviously it becomes less important if every other team around you wins as well.
It's so tight down the bottom that win, albeit was brilliant and massive at the time, it felt like you didn't make much progress up the table, and you're still looking over your shoulder. And even tonight at Old Trafford, come on, Manchester United against Everton. And then obviously when Newcastle beat City, I was thinking, oh, that's annoying. Because we would have, we went from 14th down to 15th. We're still looking over our shoulders now, and the issue is I'm pleased with the result. I'm very, very pleased. But with Spurs and City to come, you're thinking, well, there's 2 tough games. If we don't get anything from those games, and we could find ourselves 17th, 18th by going into Crystal Palace. Albeit when we go to preview Spurs, I've got my take is that I think we're going to get something from the game. But look, overall, the performance was brilliant. The subs, again, changing games. I thought Emil Smith-Rowe was absolutely superb. And that is the first time this season, maybe apart from the United game where he scored, the first time this season where I've gone, that is what I expect to see from Smith-Rowe, whether it be from the start or whether it be from the bench. Turning, running, getting a shot away. I know it was a bit of a wild effort which went wide, but it was a good effort. It was a decent move. And I thought he would really progress the ball very well, looked very sharp, and it gave us another good option. I still think King did really well in the first half, getting away from his man a couple of times, nice couple of runs. I think, and we said it on Saturday night, Joe, I think we were speaking on the group chat, everyone played well. No one had a stinker, no one had a bad game. And collectively, we could have scored a couple more goals, but you'll take 1-0 in the 85th minute. I want to ask you about Raul Jimenez. I was sort of looking at Twitter and looking at my replies, and I was getting really confused as to why he was getting so much stick. And the reason people were saying, oh, he's useless, like he didn't have a good game. I was like, well, at this stage, it doesn't matter if he had a good game or not. He scored the winning goal. And not only that, he only came back from international duty on Thursday and trained on Friday and played Saturday. How he's not getting more credit for that, I don't understand. And Marco Silva, he might not be aware of what the fan opinion of Raul Jimenez was at the weekend, but when asked about him in his press conference, 2 or 3 questions were about him in the press conference. He was full of praise about his tenacity, about how he's come from that horrible injury he picked up at Wolves to now, and he's still scoring important goals for us. And whether it almost doesn't matter that he didn't put in a 10 out of 10 performance, because luckily, and I say because everyone was good, I think everyone was good because Jimenez ultimately got the goal, which means he had a good performance because he was the match winner. But ultimately, the players around him, Wilson, Kevin, King, Smith-Rowe, Berger, Iwobi, all had good games. So we weren't relying too much on Raul Jimenez, who obviously is a focal point, someone we need to hold up the ball. He didn't get much in that game, but when the moment mattered, he was the one in the box who smelt the danger when, or didn't smell the danger, he capitalised on that brilliant cross from Chukwueze and scored. And yet I'm scrolling through Twitter and I'm seeing more negative comments about Raul than positive, and I'm slightly confused by that. What about you?
I would agree in terms of I'd be surprised by that. There's a little bit of discontent around me. I can't pretend that I wasn't completely removed from it in terms of I was starting to think that Jimenez was tiring on the weekend before his goal. I thought he was working really hard. There were times that I thought almost too hard in terms of pressing and running between the Sunderland centre-backs, because I was thinking, preserve your energy. We do have a striker on the bench, but we're not going to bring them on, realistically, was my sort of thought process. That's another can of worms. Would I have brought him on? Maybe, but Marco Silva's probably not going to. But I thought that Jimenez was competing really well against some tricky centre backs there, in particular Ballard, who he definitely got the better of over the course of the 90, in particular for the goal, obviously. But his movement was always posing a threat. Let's face it was a one chance, one goal situation for him. I know he had a half chance after the goal, but when it really mattered, he got in between the defender and the goalkeeper, some clever movement and a fantastic cross, which I'm sure we'll come on to specifically. But I thought he worked really hard. I thought he was working off scraps, despite the fact that a lot of our forward players were performing better than they had done previously. I think that, ultimately, that's the performance that I expect from Jimenez in terms of hardworking. And when a chance falls to him, he'll take it. He's still a very good striker. The only thing that worries me about him is when we have some of these like 3 game weeks, and if he can play there for the full 90, but that is a problem for Silva and for Jimenez to sort out. But you can never, ever doubt his work ethic. You can never doubt his commitment to the club. And I'm always confident that when he's on the pitch, he will give everything. And I thought that he did that on Saturday. Now, where the game was won and lost, I agree with you, Jack. I think it was in midfield predominantly, and then obviously a game changer coming off the bench, which we'll speak about in a little bit more detail in a sec. But Berger, I think I should say something about as well, because I think I was tweeting about him during the international break, and that Everton performance really sort of wound me up a bit in terms of from everyone. But from him, I was thinking, we're not seeing anything from you going forward at all. And I understand that he plays at the base of midfield, but when him and Lukic are there has to be an onus on them to attack as well, and especially from set pieces and things like this. Now, on the weekend, he was obviously at the base of midfield, but he was great going forward. Like you say, created multiple big chances, had a shot from distance as well, constantly involved in winning the ball up high up the pitch. That's what I expect. I'm not sitting here and saying you need to be getting, I don't know, who would I say, unfortunately, is a goal-scoring midfielder, what, Frank Lampard numbers when they're coming from midfield, for lack of a better player to mention. Someone that's a consistent goal scorer despite playing deeper. I know that Lampard didn't play as deep as Berger, and obviously we don't want to draw too many comparisons to them as people or players. But ultimately, he was doing what I wanted from him. He doesn't have to be on the score sheet, but he has to be getting involved, and I loved what I saw from him. Iwobi played better with Berger there. He played so much better with him there centrally. I thought King was doing really well. And then when he came off for Smith Rowe, again, a bit of discontent around me. People saying, what? Why is he bringing King off? And I tended to agree at the time. Shows what I know. No disrespect to King, but what Smith Rowe was providing was just different in terms of where on the pitch he was playing. There's some great analysis online. Smith Rowe normally tends to play over on the left, whereas King is slightly more on the right. So it was very interesting tactically about the space where Marco wanted to exploit. And obviously, it's now time to come on to the main man, Chukwueze, who obviously came on. Kevin wasn't having his best game. I thought Kevin was trying hard. I thought there was a few times he put the ball into the right area and there wasn't enough players in the box. But obviously the one thing that people remember are those 2 chances he had in the first half, 3 really, and it just wasn't his day. And I think that his day will come. But Chukwueze came on. I think it was the right decision over Wilson, who was looking a bit more dangerous than Kevin. And he was more of a stereotypical winger, playing with his stronger foot against the fullback, not looking to cut inside. And ultimately, even before that killer cross that we've all seen a million times now to lead to the goal, he was so dangerous. Everything was front-footed. Everything was coming off. It was one of those days. It was a bit like Kevin against Leeds, where everything came off. And players have those. And we're lucky that we've got a squad of players. Wilson had that exact game for Wales midweek. We've got players that maybe sometimes they'll be a bit quiet, like Kevin was. Chukwueze had that against Cambridge, for example. But he's also had 2 really killer assists now for us in the league. 2 huge goals. I know the Bournemouth one didn't lead to any points in the end, but that was putting us 1-0 up away from home with 20 minutes left. It was a huge moment. Kevin has been integral in winning that corner that we scored from against Leeds, and also the Newcastle equaliser as well was basically from him, and the impact that he had, and also obviously the equaliser that King scored at Wickham. So I'm loving that all our wingers are getting involved in different moments, and it's not just 1 or 2. Chukwueze, I think, Jack, we'll come on to our Spurs preview in a little bit more detail in a minute, but you cannot put a stronger case forward than that to start the game. He was so brilliant. The only question for me is which side he would start on. And that's a bit more of a debate because obviously someone has to get dropped. But I thought that he linked up really nicely with Smith Rowe and with Sessegnon, who sort of launched into a hybrid midfield role as we were pinning Sunderland back. It was so exciting. Where I sit, they were coming towards me all the time on that left-hand side as we attack. I've got to say, Jack, just going back to your Smith Rowe point about the volley that he put wide, I celebrated that for about 2.5 seconds. Like, I thought it was in from where I sit because the net sort of like hit off the side netting. Anyway, it was a very exciting last 15 minutes, and I think we truly got what we deserved. Sunderland are no mugs. I did put on Twitter, and this is not trying to like get any bites from Sunderland. I thought Sunderland, in terms of on the ball and how they set up, were the worst team we played this season. And I've got a few people saying, what about Wolves? And I honestly think that Wolves were rubbish on the day. I thought they were rubbish. But when it was 11v11, they were harder to play through than Sunderland were. And that is partly down to Sunderland, but also partly down to how well we played. And I thought that maybe I should have put more emphasis on that when I tweeted it, because I thought we were great going forward on the weekend. And with a few more, with a finer finishing touch, we score 3 or 4 on another day.
Yeah, I mean, you got to obviously deal with the cards you dealt with. But just imagine if you had Robinson in this team as well, overlapping, and then had Sess as another wide option to bring off the bench. Samuel Chukwueze is obviously now the signing of the summer at the moment. Not that there's many to pick from. And I think, look, the Kevin situation is interesting because he was the one who we were talking about for 2.5 hours at the Golden Lion after Leeds and saying he's going to be the best player in Fulham's history. And it hasn't quite worked since then. I don't think he's been disastrous. I think against Newcastle he came on and did really, really well. And I think that there is definitely a player in there. And, I can't use you can only use he hasn't adapted to the Premier League just yet. But he had lots of football before coming into Fulham, even this season for Shakhtar. So he's not unfit. It's not like he's behind the pace. He probably just hasn't acclimatized to the Premier League as much as Chukwueze has. With all that considered, I think Harry Wilson gives us something different on the right that we need. Something on the break. I'm picturing Spurs. I'm getting a lot of scenarios in my head already about how I think Spurs away could look. And I think that I would rather have Harry Wilson on the right and Chukwueze on the left with Kevin as the option, rather than go with Chukwueze on the right and Kevin on the left, or Iwobi on the left. I think Wilson's really, really key in the quality he brings in the final third, the link up, the balls into the box, and I think that could be key. And then obviously Chukwueze a bit more speed, a little bit more tenacity in terms of his crossing abilities as well, which we've seen on Saturday. And then obviously Kevin can come off the bench. Traore can come off the bench, stretch the defence, and make things look a little bit more dangerous for us in those attacking areas. What an assist. What a ball. At the time, Joe, I was sat in a seat which I'm not usually in. I was slightly to the right of the halfway line towards the Hammersmith end, which actually does make a huge difference in how you perceive the atmosphere in the Hammersmith end. When you're slightly more towards the away end, you can't hear the Hammersmith end as much. And I thought the atmosphere was okay. It wasn't anything special, but
a bit better though, wasn't it? It was a little bit better than it has been.
And I think that's reflected in the performance. I think we're creating chances, and we're knocking on the door, and we've been a better team. And I think that the majority of people in the Hammersmith end, the Johnny Haynes around me, were getting behind the team, and I think that's what ultimately got us over the line, as well as the players on the pitch. So when my point being is, I didn't appreciate the ball in from Samuel Chukwueze, or I didn't get to see the finish in its totality because of people standing up in front of me and whatever. And I had to I was fully like a fan when we scored, like getting up on my feet and cheering it, because there wasn't many. Well, there was just space to do so. Then I had to sort of tweet what had happened. Didn't watch any of the replay because I was my head was in the laptop, and only when I got home watched Match of the Day and had to wait all the way to the end because we were last on. And I was like, bloody hell, what a ball that was! I mean, it really was. Round the side of the defender into a complete corridor of uncertainty, and Raul gambles. Roof does not gamble. He goes out, he comes back in, he retreats. It gives Raul the space to poke in, and we 100% deserved it. I mean, the chance that they had 9 seconds into the second half with Enzo Lefebvre, who, by the way, is a gorgeous footballer, wonderful to watch. That was a good chance. We switched off, obviously, right at the start of the half. apart from that, a couple of opportunities for Bertrand Traoré and Isidore at the front post in the second half, which was blocked away. I think Anderson got in the way. By the way, Anderson as well is having a stormer of a season under the radar a little bit. I think he's really coming into his own, actually, Anderson. Fully deserved win. And you know what? Like I mentioned earlier, obviously Spurs and City, and you're thinking, are there many points in there? I think maybe there is. I mean, these are two teams who lost in pretty poor style at the weekend. I thought City should have definitely had a penalty and scored more goals. They definitely should have scored. They could have conceded more goals as well. They weren't brilliant at the back. Guardiola losing his head a little bit as well. But Spurs yesterday, goodness gracious me, that was as bad a performance as you'll see in a North London derby. You compound that, you add on the performance against Chelsea at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, where they were absolutely losing their marbles. But their recent results, I know they beat Everton 3-0 a few weeks ago, but and they drew to Man United as well, and obviously let that go late on as well. So they've had some tricky fixtures, 3 in a row against top 6 teams, and come out with 1 point. 1 point, yeah. From that, they also lost in the Carabao Cup in dismal fashion to Newcastle. Like just didn't lay a glove on them. I think we're going to go to the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium and get something, whether that be a point, whether that be a win. The mood around the place is terrible. They've got to go to Paris on Wednesday against Paris Saint-Germain in the Champions League. They'll get back Thursday, got to play Saturday night. Well, we've had a full week of training. I know that doesn't make a huge amount of difference, but I think it's a factor. And I think Fulham going in off a win compared to them off a Derby Day defeat and then Champions League action in the week. I'm feeling pretty good about this. And let's not forget the performance we put in there last season. We probably should have won the game. In my honest opinion.
Absolutely should have won. 100%. Yeah, I'm feeling good about this one as well. I mean, the thing about that performance yesterday, Jack, was there was just nothing from them. And that's their biggest game of the season. Well, one of two, I know that Chelsea's a big game for them as well, but it's not on the same level as that North London derby. And there was a few players that, maybe were putting in maximum effort, Polina being one of them. But there was a lot where I was just thinking, oh my goodness, where's the fight? I would be absolutely livid if I was a Spurs fan, especially after what they did against Chelsea a few weeks ago, where there were no shots on target. Now, they've got one of the worst home records in the league so far this season, just to lay out the facts. They've won their first game 3-0 against Burnley, which was, by all accounts, a very decent performance from them, regardless of what you think of the opposition. They obviously then lost to Bournemouth, and they created nothing in that Bournemouth game. They created nothing against Chelsea either. They drew to Man United with a last-minute equaliser from Man United when United had 10 men and brought the keeper up to make it 11v11 in the box and somehow lost a lick. And they also had that last-minute equaliser to snatch a very, to prevent Wolves' only win of the season from Polina. And lost to Villa. I forgot about that one. And that one, they were 1 goal up and just completely threw it away, albeit with some very good finishing, I think, and notably from Buendia. Ultimately, this is a very winnable game. That we need to just put it out there. It's a very winnable game. And I'll be very disappointed if we don't get something. I'm not going to sit here and say that I would be absolutely gutted, fuming if we got a point, because ultimately at the moment, I'll take what we can get. And a point at Tottenham is not a bad result, especially with our away record, but this is a big opportunity. And I think that this is the easiest of our next 3 games on paper in terms of this, City and then Palace at home. I'm more scared of Palace than I am of Tottenham. Now, look, Tottenham have got some very good players that on their day can turn up and tear you apart. Xavi Simons hasn't really shown it yet. He's a fantastic player. Polina, we know what he can do. Their defence have got some good players going forward as well as at the back. They will be without Romero, their captain, although from what I saw yesterday, I don't think it's a huge loss. I didn't see much leadership from him at all. I just think that we can take these little wins about, they're missing Romero. Let's hope for, maybe a suspension in this PSG game. And all the pressure is on Tottenham. Thomas Frank knows that the pressure is actually starting to build on him. The fans are absolutely fuming about the Chelsea game, let alone the Arsenal game yesterday. The home record's poor. They've got this PSG game, which, let's face it, they are probably unlikely to win. I think that they would be absolutely over the moon with a draw. They've been quite good away this season, Arsenal aside, so it's not out of the question, but I doubt it. But ultimately, Jack, there's a lot of things building here. but it all depends on Fulham. I think that we've seen two different sides of Fulham away from home this season. We have seen the side that scrapped at Brighton. We've seen the side that really scrapped at Chelsea and dominated the game until things obviously went away from us.
Right.
But we have also seen that side that were, really poor at Everton, that didn't lay a glove on them. That's the side that I don't accept seeing on the weekend. We would need to go out there and we need to show them no respect, is my opinion.
This is going to be very, very interesting because obviously yesterday they went to a back three with wing backs. They are without Romero, as you say. So my thinking is that they're going to either stick with that formation, which I don't think they should do, given they're at home and should take the game to Fulham. So I think Danso plays at the back with Van der Ven, with Doggy and Spence at the back, or Gray. They might keep the same midfield. I mean, Odegaard, Kudos, Richarlison as a front three could possibly be an option. Sarr could come back in, Colin Moani, Brennan Johnson, Pedro Porro could come back in for Spence. Yavi Siemens, like you say, as well. And they also have options like Matthias Tell and Bergval. I mean, they do have a good squad. I mean, let's not beat around the bush.
Yeah.
They've got a very good team.
Yeah, absolutely.
However, their confidence is low, and ours is pretty much not at its peak in terms of confidence, but I think it's on the rise, it's on the up. And in these sort of games, like you say, the pressure's extremely on Tottenham, right? They've got to take the game to us. And what did Fulham do quite well? Not brilliantly against Everton. In fact, just disregard the Everton game completely. But I think about the game. I don't really think about the Bournemouth game because we didn't have a focal point. The same with Villa because we were actually quite good when we took the lead. And obviously, I still think we were quite good in the first half against Villa, the first 35 minutes at least. But if we can get the ball in transition, if we can break, if we can use the wide players and get Iwobi in the 8 forward, King, and the 2 wingers with Jimenez, I think there are chances for Fulham on the break here to create opportunities. And I think that we've only had one real bad performance at Spurs since we've been promoted. The 2-0 loss on the Monday night, we were completely... And that was when we were playing with 2 left-sided centre-backs in Ream and Bassi. And we made 2 errors in the lead up to their goals with Maddison and Son. I think the first season we battled hard and they scored a couple of offside goals. Mitrovic got a goal back, and actually I think we played quite well.
Yeah,
probably did deserve to lose. And then the one last season, we
battered them.
We were better, way
yeah.
better. I was in the away end for that one, and I just seem to remember thinking, how have we not won that one? And look, I do expect Fulham to get something from the game. And I'm not going to stretch it to a win. I'm going to go for a draw. I think Fulham are going to draw. 1-1 seems the logical way to go. It wouldn't surprise me if it was 2-2, where we pegged them back twice. But I think 1-1.
I could see it. I'm not going to go as bullish as I have done previously because I think it cost us against Everton when I said we'd win 3-1. I don't think we had three touches in their half, if I'm honest. I think a draw. And I think the important thing here is that we just reduce the defeats to a minimum. We've got too used to losing. And we've been very good at avoiding defeat under Silva, I would say, over the last few seasons. So, I'm going to say a 1-1 draw. And I'm going to say it's one of those where we come away from it thinking, that's not a bad result, but also we really could have won that, which I felt the last 2 times that we've drawn 1-1 at Tottenham. Because I remember the one under Parker, we had a chance very late on, which...
Of course, yeah.
Who mucked up the pass? Someone did. I can't remember.
Abu Kamara.
Yeah, and we just broke away. And then obviously the one there last year, I know that Tom Kenny got sent off, but even then we had a chance to nick it at the end with Wilson. But when it was 11v11, we were all over them, and Brennan Johnson's goal was vastly undeserved and against the run of play. We've got a good record against Tottenham over the last couple of years, and I hope it can continue. In terms of the team, Jack, I mean, there's 2 main talking points in my opinion. I don't think we could sit here and say that the back four should change at all after a clean sheet. I certainly won't, even though I love Cuenca and wanted to see him get a bit more football. I think it would be harsh to drop Bassi. He did nothing really wrong in that game. And obviously the rest of the back four stays the same for the time being with Robinson still out. The midfield is one, and then the wingers is the other, I think. And the midfield, I don't think that we should be putting Lukic back in and going more defensive. I think that we should have a go, is my opinion. I think that when you come on to playing City, I think that you need Lukic and Berger. I think that that's a must. But I think for this one, I think that you try and force the game onto Tottenham. And, I don't think that there were any issues defensively that I saw against Sunderland that made me think against a better team we'd get ripped apart in transition or, anything like that, because Iwobi and King were doing a good job. Now, I do think there is a question mark about if King or Smith Rowe should start. I think that on the basis of fairness, Smith Rowe came on and had a really good game. And, ultimately he had a great impact. That being said, I thought that King was playing very well before he got taken off. So I'm going to completely be rubbish here and sit on the fence and say I'll be happy with either of them starting. But what I would say, to edge in King's favour, is our last 2 away games, King's been dropped, been brought on, and especially against Everton, I think we regretted not starting him. And then the front three, I think you know what my opinion will be. I think that it should be Wilson on the right, Raul up top, and I think that you've got to start Chukwueze on the left. And sorry to Kevin, but I think Kevin can come off the bench and maybe have more of an impact this time.
Yeah, one change for me. In comes Chukwueze for Kevin. I would be really frustrated if we go with Lukic, and I think it would be one of those ones where it'd be like, have you not learned from what happened last time? Because if we play Lukic again over Iwobi in that position, then because he's so loyal to Iwobi, who's going to play, he won't drop Smith Rowe and King again. It would have to be Chukwueze and Kevin not starting and Iwobi on the left. I just don't see it has
a massive ripple effect throughout the squad. Yeah. And ultimately, from what I saw from Tottenham yesterday, there is no reason why we shouldn't be attacking them. The defence was absolutely awful. And that was with 2 defensive midfielders and 5 defenders. And I know that it's the tactics rather than the personnel sometimes, or rather than the system. But ultimately, there is no reason why we shouldn't be going there and trying to score goals and win this game.
Let's not forget, we beat Spurs the last time we played them, albeit it was at the Cottage. There's also a point to be made, which is very minor, that I would go with King over Smith Rowe, because I think King is... I think Smith Rowe, if he starts, or even if he comes on, he'll just get pelters for being an ex-Arsenal player. I don't necessarily think that's going to distract him or make him play worse or whatever, but I can see King just being very, very positive. Iwobi in those attacking transitions, running with the ball, playing it to the wide areas. I could just see the attacks happening. It's just whether we can score from them. The danger man for me, the player I'm not looking forward to seeing get on the ball in the final third, is Mohamed Kudus, because he can make things happen. I think Richarlison's obviously a massive threat in the middle, and Yavi Siemens, we've yet to see the best from him, and like you say, he's a good player. Looking forward to seeing João Palhinha, but let's hope he doesn't crunch one of our players and they're out for the rest of the season. I'm sure.
Let's face it, our ideal scenario is he gets a red card in Paris, isn't it? And hopefully that carries over to the league.
I don't think it carries in the league, but it will.
Oh no!
But maybe a slight hamstring knock for Palhinha.
Just whatever Cole Palmer did, where he apparently he stubbed his toe playing FIFA. He can do that. Not a serious one. I wouldn't wish that on João.
Yeah. Okay, so we're both going for 1-1 draws. I really wouldn't be surprised if we're coming out the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium at whatever time, walking back to Seven Sisters, with 3 points. It wouldn't surprise me at all. And I think if we beat Spurs, I think Frank may be the next on the chopping block. Especially
if they lose in Paris, which I expect them to. I suppose, Jack, we won't speak again before the City game. I mean, the City game, we obviously can't really do a preview without seeing what happens in the next few games for both of us, but they are gettable at, like you said earlier, in terms of that loss to Villa came out of nowhere. And then the loss to Newcastle kind of as well, in terms of, obviously both those teams are very strong at home. And especially, St. James's Park under the lights. We are very strong at home. And I don't think that either of them are that much better than us, especially Newcastle. Obviously they have these players that are really good in these battles and these big games. They raise themselves to the occasion. We did that against Arsenal and we came out unlucky with half our squad out, essentially. So I can see us making life difficult for them. The only difference there is that they've got a striker that is, let's just say, Because, for example, if we were playing City this weekend, I'd be like, there is just no way we get a result against them, because I just don't think lightning strikes twice in a row for City in terms of them not being quite at it, or Haaland not being quite at it. The fact they've got a game in between and it's Leeds, we'll see what happens there. They've obviously got Champions League as well before that. I really hope that just something can happen. Maybe they just go with a false sense of security or something, so they're not coming to us with a point to prove like they would have been if we were playing them this weekend. Because sometimes City are at their scariest when the chips are down and they've got a bit of a lead now to Arsenal. I think it's 7 points, so it's a big game for them.
We've played City all 3 times previously in the Premier League under Silva, right at the end of the season. Last game of the season, last season, last home game of the season before, and it might have been the second to last home game the season before that. It'd been right at the end of the campaigns, and it felt as if I remember coming out of all 3 of those games thinking, well, I mean, it's the end of the season, we're safe anyway. Whereas we're in the nitty gritty of the beginning of the festive period. I will be singing Blue Moon, You Saw Me Standing Alone on Saturday when they're playing Leeds, but it's very much Come on Fulham when they come to the Cottage in a few days' time. Yeah, it's obviously hard to predict, but I agree. I don't think they're at their scintillating best. I think everyone feels a little bit fragile at the moment in the Premier League, and I think we can get at them. Joe, that's all from us. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. And let me leave you all with one reason to be cheerful is on Saturday, we actually gained 2 points versus last season, because Sunderland are the equivalent of Southampton the year before in terms of being the playoff winning team. So we're up 2 points there, which takes us, we're still below overall. For example, you factor in a win at Chelsea, factor in a win at Newcastle, a draw against Arsenal last year. But there's been points that we picked up that we haven't last year. Now, if you look to our next 3 games, last year we got 1 point from this run of Tottenham, City and Palace, both at home. So anything 2 points or above, and we beat it, 1 point matches it. There is reasons to be cheerful that obviously we've had a tough run. We can come out the other side actually looking better than we did last season, but we just need to win some of these, maybe slightly more unexpected games. And I do think these next 3 fall into that category. It would be great. We've had it a bit recently where basically since that Man United game, we've won or lost. It would be quite nice to, maybe we're not at our best, get a point, something like that. And that's maybe what I anticipate at the weekend.
We will see. Final question from me. I just want a yes or no. Conor Gallagher in January, yes or no?
Yes, I like it. I like a goal scoring midfielder. I can see it happening. Hard working, yeah.
I mean, he is a Chelsea boy. In fact,
not really.
One of my relatives was friends with him in school. And he's very Chelsea.
All right, scrap that. No.
Well, you never know. It's not too far away. I think Chelsea want a permanent move as well. If we signed him permanently, I think that when I think of a midfield option that we need in January,
he's the right profile, isn't he?
He's the right profile. Yeah, absolutely. All right, then we'll see what happens. Not only against Spurs and City, but in the January transfer window as well. We'll be back again soon with another episode. Thank you so much for watching and listening on the pod feed. And come on, Fulham.